Yeah, okay, so we continue our Chazorah on 221. So having identified that the level of Lo Adam, which means no Shinuyim, absolute, is ultimately Atzmos Yisbarach. Everything else is not absolute, it's a murkav, it's a fusion. Even the highest level of cause and effect is already a fusion. A source and a result is also fusion, as we explained at length, relatively speaking. Okay. So the true Lo Adam, therefore, is Dafka Atzmos Yisbarach. So now he's going to go back to explaining the two levels of Merkava and the Chidush of the Merkava of the Ovis over the Merkava Stam. So he's saying that even at the bottom of 221, that there's Taka Esses Vedas, but on his Chalkos, but it's Kedusha. So therefore, there's Bittul. We're talking about the Esses Vedas of Atzilus, and therefore, here too, a person that's Nishtalshim, a person who's the Nefesh, is a reflection of Lamaila. So therefore, a person, notwithstanding that he is a Metzius and his Midas are all Metzius, they're entities, they have a sense of separation and self. Not a sense, that's a starting point. It's more than a sense, it's the reality. Nonetheless, they can be bittul. So he's an Adam Megimatria Ma. So even though Ma means also something, it also means nothing. So therefore, there can be the union of bittul. And these are the two dargas of bittul. It's now page 222. So he can have and bittul therefore engenders his skalulus amidus. Where there's bittul, so there is a cooperation of the midas. And from whence comes the cooperation? Level one, the cooperation comes from seichel. And there were a number of very interesting dogmois which we should review. First, he establishes that the midah on its own, each midah on its own, would be unproductive. Pure chesed will give someone that shouldn't get it. And just 1 second, just fix this. I didn't do it before. I don't know if I can now. It's too late. No, it's not. Okay. So pure chesed would give someone that's not roi, and likewise gevura, pure gevura, so therefore we need first of all gevura that should temper the chesed, that it should be in such a way that the recipient can absorb it, and not ribui tova that spoils or indulges or ruins the mekabel. So gevura, also pure gevura, it can also be inappropriate. Or what's the word I'm looking for? Inappropriate, unproductive. Pure gevura can be undesirable, because pure gevura can say, nobody gets anything. Why should you get? If you have earned it, then you'll get it. Not being given anything. He brings the various psukim that convey pure gevura. So therefore, there's needed that the gevura has to be tempered and slavish in chesed. You have gevura begam malachim yosim tehila. Even the angels are in dread, and shamayim lazacha be'inav. Even heaven is found not meritorious. And as the Rashi tells us in the Medrash, the world couldn't endure if he just created the world with gevura. So therefore, you have to have the of what? of chesed. So that Gevurah is not extreme and is tempered. That Hashem shouldn't be so exacting and demanding, and therefore there could be that even though there's a din, but he still comes out meritorious. Arguably, if you're already coming in a din, so there's already, a conflict. There's two sides. Nobody deserves anything. The very fact that you're arguing, but nonetheless, Gevurah is tempered with chesed, and there can be someone that is that comes out meritorious and zakai. It's only because of chesed influence. So what's the nekuda here? There are other examples. Top of page 223. You guys speak up. Those are very beautiful, extreme examples. Very powerful examples of chesed being tempered with Gevurah. L'shalom l'seinov al ponov la'avidai. Which means, anybody? Top of 223, second line.
Kill him with love.
Yeah, he rewards. The explanation there is that al Panov, he gets his reward in this world. It's deserved. I mean, he's already done some good. It's not a lie. He gets his reward in this world, but la'avidai lasidavai, as we explained in three different ways that reward can be dispensed. This world, the next world, or a combination of both. Which he speaks about or alludes to in Tanya and Perek Aleph there about the fish nidin ach rubai. Person is judged according to the majority. We explained this. The majority of his deeds will determine how he's going to be rewarded. So he's getting his reward. But what's the kavanah? You don't want to give him his reward in Elam Haba, so la'avidai gets it here. So here is a pure act of Gevurah, but it's being tempered in chesed. Another example. Yeah, that example is B'Hashem Mishpat Shom Pole. It's talking about Sholem Melech. The Eibishter was critical of David HaMelech. There was a terrible plague. It was a famine. And the reason for the famine was two opposite things. Number one, Shaul wasn't accorded the honor that was due him. And number two, it was a punishment, what Shaul did in wiping out the Kohanim of Noiv. The Gemara asks, how could it be possible that this famine comes both as a praise for him and a criticism of him? The Gemara answers, where a person is judged, there his good deeds are also recounted and rewarded. Right, so there's another example of he's in a state of judgment. Gevurah is going on over here, he's on trial, but in the trial, Gufa is arouses his reward. What was the final example? The Beis Hamikdash. What does the Navi say? Yirmiyahu says, Al api al chamosi, over my anger and fury. This city was for me the day that it was built. Referring to Michelle, I'm going to ask you to mute. Oh, good. The day that it was built, and the Shaila is the day it was built, tremendous simcha. 7 days of simcha that ran straight into Sukkot. It was 14 days, including Yom Kippur, and they didn't fast. And yet he calls it what? Alapi val chamosi. Why? Because even in Midas Chesed, and likewise Gevurah, you can have this afochim, and one tolerates and integrates the other. However, so this is all level one. It's a medical level. He's not finished with it. We'll go further. There's some more elaboration. So middle of the second paragraph on page 223. So likewise, the Adam is right. It made up is these two words, ma, referring to both bittul and mitzias. So what was his beard of h'tshk kadmacha? We tell him, h'tshk kadmacha. What's that? What's the context of that quote? The Gemara in Sanhedrin, at the end of that paragraph, what remembers the story there. Why man is created last? The answer is, the meaning of being created last depends on us. If he behaves virtuously, last means the crown, the pinnacle of creation. If he doesn't, he's told, you're the last and least worthy. Even a yitush precedes you. What's the yitush? The ma'alne isle, mafakna lesle, which means it takes in, but doesn't take out, doesn't excrete, which means the most selfish creature possible, doesn't even give back. The fact is, when we excrete, it's a fertilizer, it gives back to the world. But it's interesting, in the Rabbi he brings very often how meiraglayim was used in times of the Gemara as a scouring, cleaning agent. Once it had, over time, very acidic. So there's something that the human being can even though it's waste, but there's benefit. But here the yitush is such a lowly creature that it only takes in and doesn't give out. So he's told that you were created even after the yitush. He doesn't give out, but it's not destroying the world. And you, is destroying the world. So this is the two extremes of ma, of mitzias, and mitzias that is post to kedusha, or ma, true bittul. Which is why the final quote that the Adam was his place, was before his chamber, his portion. It's before the Malach HaShodes, and then the Malach has to find out from us what's doing Lamaila. Basi Lagani brings this in. Okay, so the two extremes. So therefore, the bottom line is that the person can bring bittul to bear even in his emotions, which are highly subjective and ego. At the core of their ego, I feel, I love, I want. There can be bittul there. What does he say? However, and Oisvav, the big omnam, the big however is, and it's not a chsarim, as we learned, this is the tchilas ha'avodah, and it's a meridik avodah. So how is this bittul induced? How are the midas softened? Why do the midas tolerate each other? How is the person as a whole able to be motivated by an act of chesed and yet invested in gevura? I think you brought earlier. They didn't bring an example, interesting, of disciplining a child out of chesed. You know what? He doesn't bring that martial form. As I'm thinking, it's a martial that's brought sometimes. Because there's you don't need the seichel for that. Because of the atzmistic connection to the child, and naturally, that's like an example. It's not an example of a pure chesed, but it's just an example of a iskalalos that doesn't need the whole agenda. At any rate, the examples he brings here are all agendas, all iskalalos orchestrated by what? By seichel. You have a goal, you want to be effective, so you're going to use a cooperation of contrasting midas, even though overall right now it's a gevura relationship or it's a chesed relationship. But seichel says that to be effective, you want the end result. So the end result is you've got to employ the contrary midah in this relationship. So it's all orchestrated, the soften, it's called chalishus hamidas. The midas are weakened, they're compromised in the face of seichel. Meich shalat alalev. That's tchilas ha'avodah. And that's, as we said, a wonderful avodah. Now on page 224. But that's not the tachlis. The tachlis in 224. Second paragraph, yeah? what's the tachlis? We were struggling with this a little bit as Adam was asking if the Fabrengen, we explain the next level in terms of different people. So, right? The Shluchim. Let's first state what it is and then try and understand it as it means within the person himself, within his own midas. But what does he say? The tachlis is not chalishas, not weakening, not softening, not because the midas are surrendered to the seichel. And the seichel by nature dominates midas. Like the example we gave, a person can, not a perfect example, but crave, addicted to cigarettes, and he really wants it, desires it. But if he's seen a picture of his own lungs and knows that the next cigarette is going to, it's going to kill him, or then he just won't do it. There's a real, that's the whole point of Tanya, that no matter what's going on, the heart can burn like a furnace. But if there's a real conviction in the seichel, it's not magic. The conviction of seichel will control the midah. It's a natural thing. So it'll weaken it, it'll soften it. But that's not the tachlis. The tachlis is, he says, that the midas should be betoikef in their full intensity. And nonetheless, at that level, not because of the introduction of seichel, but the midah itself and its own world is an absolutely scholarless and peace with the contrary midah. Moreover, one receives from the other, complete without the other. The mashal he gave was the head and the foot. That when something happens to the head, so you bleed the foot, and that can help the head, heal the head, the bloodletting. The shleimus of the rosh is incomplete without the leg. So what's the hezbollah here? What kind of a scholar says, how does this happen? How is it possible that on the one hand we're talking about the midas in their full intensity, and at the same time absolute bittul? The two meanings of ma fused simultaneously. And then the kud of the answer is expressed in the second line of page 225. And that is, shekol metzias ha'koiches yirak mitzat shleimus hanefesh. When the faculties of the soul are expressive of the essence of the neshama, then two things happen and they're a contradiction at the same time. One is they're nothing. This is all the nefesh. The nefesh's choice to express itself this way, and they're everything because this is the nefesh expressing himself. So that also engenders a complete bittul, because Chesed looks in Gvura and says, you're also the shleimus of the nefesh. And if you ain't doing your thing, then we've compromised the shleimus of the nefesh. So I'm nothing. My whole inyan is to express the shleimus of the nefesh. That the nefesh, the person can express itself in these 10 or 7 ways. If one of them is not firing, then the desire of the nefesh is not realized. And so everything else feels empty. More than empty, like valueless. Because the whole point is that the nefesh should express itself.
If the previous of it
Yeah.
is Moishe essentially, this one also has to be born from the his too, otherwise it can happen, right?
Right. Number one. Number two, it only comes after the first avodah. It only
the distinction. I mean, it seems just like a different sort of disbandedness. That's gonna, in terms of the avodah, practical.
It's not so much. It is burniness, yes. Like everything has to be, understood in the mind. But it's more from the rots and atzmi than nefesh. It's a mesidus nefesh and a bittul that's rooted in a deep Kabbalah soil. It's not so much this burniness. True, there's this burniness. Why should it have Kabbalah soil? But then it's no longer a seichel thing, which is going to kind of lead us to the question that I don't have a good answer to the question you asked, but which I'll put on the table in a second. Let's all discuss it and see if we can have some understanding. Also, we get to what the question I'm asking. That was the Adam raised. But let's just continue it, like summarize the Oisir. So This is the vote of the Magid. Shalom b'mroimav. He makes peace. And we have Medaik here now explanation that God's doing this. It's not natural to the Malachim, because that's the whole point of the Maimer, that the Malachim's bittul is a natural one. It's a Mechet Alev bittul. But the Ma'ila V'yid down here of the office is you can have this Mesidas Nefesh bittul. That's Mizdiki bittul. At any rate, what do we see there? That Bechol Sar Shel Shelek and Gavriel Sar Shalesh, Veinu Mechabim says the two Malachim are couldn't be more opposite, fire and water, or fire and snow, and they don't extinguish each other. That was the uniqueness of the plague of Podoh, of the hail, and that induced the first time his response to the hail was different to the other ones. That wording there, but there's a God or something. He said in such a way more than the previous ones, dafka because of fire and water coexisting and not extinguishing each other. It was a ball of ice inside was burning a fire. Why? If it's all the shleimus of Alikus, then they can and do coexist in perfect harmony, each one not compromising the other. It's pure fire and it's pure ice. And what was another illustration of that? At the end of this parak, have a look and tell me. Of this, of the fusion of Mitzias and not Mitzias, Mitzias built in Mitzias Nimitza. Ma, meaning both Bittul and Mitzias. What was the final illustration there? You don't have the paper in front of you. You have there. I made 10. Okay. I'll give you a guess. Beis Hamikdash, Kedesh HaKadoshim. Not a guess here. Mokim Orden Einem in Amida. The point there is that the Orden took up no space. The diak is only because the Orden was precisely built according to the measurements of Torah. So it's its diak, it's its precision that made it not take up space. The specific measurements, 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5, etc. And the example brought in, again, the beautiful example brought Shema Morim ago, that Hanoider Avnas, the person makes a neder on the condition that when he makes the neder, that the neder is mufar, becomes nullified, is another example of the existence invites and induces its non-existence. Its existence declares its non-existence. The nullification of the neder only happens when he makes the neder. Beautiful example in Nigla. So here it concludes is Nimna Nimnois, conclusion of that paragraph. Shamidis Yor B'Toikev, the emotions are B'Toikev. V'Afa B'Ken Yebeifen Shel Sholom V'Skalalos is still there peaceful. So what does this mean on a personal level? That was the question that was asked. So what we said here was, we can understand this. Yes, you want to close the door, please? Thank you. The illustration we gave was like in Shalichus, that for the shliach, not only is the other one not competition, and fighting over territory and money, God forbid. I'm seeing theory. It's never happened. We're talking a theory, but his the shliach's own success and happiness and fulfillment is dafkin that tzlach of the other person as well. If the other shliach isn't matzliach, then his whole shlichus is also, compromised in that way. Why? Because their whole metzius is the mashaleach, the shleimus of the nefesh, as it were, that has sent them, sent me, sent you. So everybody's negiyah mamish, and moreover, he'll help the other fellow, and it's not a mesidas nefesh. It's not like the first life, and I help you to keep harmony, you'll help me to give and take. It's a whole cheshbon. We'll make a kiddush Hashem, whatever the moichen is that will induce harmony, which is halavai. Halavai, there was that. This doesn't look good any other way, and life is a give and take, and it's my turn and your turn, and then my turn, and no, it's naturally and spontaneously he gives away to a very ridiculous level, Because, what do you mean, why not? A whole Metzias is the Meshaleach. Okay, so that's easy. In theoretically, I mean, you don't need to see the illustration of these words here, that the Midas is B'chol HaToikev and the Shalom and Achtus, and Shalom and Iskalulus. But what does it mean within the person himself? I'm not sure. And I suggested on Shabbos, I'm just thinking about this briefly now. What does it mean within the person? I'm just going to say this again. It means a level where the person can be trusted instinctually, and he can trust himself. That it doesn't need to have a whole agenda and a whole master plan to be appropriate. His midas, he can naturally trust the outpouring of his midas, because they're rooted in etzem nefesh, and they're bottled, and therefore they cannot aggravate. They just simply cannot cause aggravation. They will not, as you described earlier, pure chesed indulges and pure gvura creates division, and it won't. It won't. He can be very intense, but nobody's hurt by it, because it's not him. It's complete bittul. It's pure. It's pure, and therefore his instinctual. What are we talking about? The midah says they're rooted in etzem nefesh, and not as they emerge by seichel and controlled by seichel. The pure midah, which is rooted deeper than seichel, even in the nefesh, and he allows this unbridled expression, and we're not afraid. This is a tachlis avodah, this intensity, and it's all good. Why? Because it's thoroughly suffused with bittul. It's all not him. It's all the shleimus of the nefesh, or the kavanah of the Eibishter, and therefore it cannot do damage. On the contrary, it's very invigorating and very inspiring. That's what I'm sharing. I invite people to think about this further and try to understand it. What does it mean within the person? That the midas a betoikev, and it's not a seichel thing. It's a kabbalas el thing. It's a atzmis dik nefesh thing. It's pure bittul. You know, it's like thinking further, talking aloud. So it comes. Yeah, in the Tishrei. I mean, looking at Tishrei itself. If you look at the Jew externally, like what he's crying here, he's laughing here, he's dancing within a matter of days. Like, what's with this guy? So there's the seichel, thing. He understands that Rosh Hashanah is Kabbalas HaMalchus is serious. Then there's this. He learns the Ma'aber. He understands that Sukkos is Simcha, so he's besimcha. That's one level. So you look at him, you don't see such. He's integrated. It's overall. There is it is externally. He is Simcha. Here's Kabbalah. Here is Gevura. Here is Merirus. Here is. No, but the first level it's a calculated thing, so therefore it's a softened thing. It doesn't look all that crazy. But the second level is, it's Rosh Hashanah, and he's margish, and that in his nefesh. That's my nefesh, the Kabbalas HaMalchus. So there, that midah of Yira is just intense. And he's margish Simchas Torah, the Simcha of the Torah of the Eibishter, and explodes in Simcha. So externally looking at that person is a much more intense, explosive, expressive. But again, it's not going to do any, not going to be inappropriate, despite its intensity, because it's rooted in complete bittul, in the Ratzon Hashem and the shleimus of Elikus, and what the Eibishter is up to and expressing and desires right now. So what I'm saying is, maybe an illustration of this would be a fellow that is exhibiting externally very opposite and intensely opposite emotions. It doesn't look so integrated. It looks a little more. It's only the Torah, but kelim the tikkun. But it's still in kelim the tikkun. It's appropriate, and it's here, and it's now, and it's not destructive, but it's very intense. I'm just sharing further. Each one should contribute. Be happy to hear. All right, so I'll go a little bit. Okay, we have a few minutes. Okay, we'll finish Chazara tomorrow. All right, so he says, look at the second paragraph on page 225. Now he summarizes this. There's two dargas. The first darga is the darga of his bonus of chalishis. And then the tachlis he summarizes is that the midas betoikif and its intensity. At the same time, it's Eis Mahus in Ganzen. Completely no separation, no integral identity. It's all nefesh. It's not chesed, it's nefesh. Nefesh was chesed, nefesh is gevura, but it's nefesh. So likewise in Avodas Adam. Now on the Zion, so the Merkava, this is all to explain, what was the question he asked with? Why are we saying, let's just trace back to it, don't lose the flow of things. We've got to work backwards. The Shaila was, Ha'ovis heinin in Merkava, we're pinning the Ovis at the level of the Merkava. The Merkava is Bria, it doesn't need the word, but, and the Ovis Atzilus. He brings the famous, from Sefer Aboya, that Chesed Atzilus is envious of Avram. So why are we pegging them on this lower level of Merkava? This is a whole beer to explain the two levels of Merkava. But how do you get to the Merkava? Remember, how do you get to the Ovis? Why was this the question? It's all began with Podoh B'Shalom Nafshi, with the Pasuk. Because the Pasuk is talking about the three Avodas of Torah and Avodah and Gemilas Chasadim, as the Maharsha explains, not in that order, but it's all in the Pasuk, Rashi, the Maharsha. And who are they? That's the Ovis. Then came the question. Now, the Ovis are called Heinyan Merkava. Oh, what does that mean? That's the whole beer to explain Heinyan Merkava. All to answer a more primary question. Tefillah b'tzibur. Why dafka tefillah b'tzibur and not just tefillah? Okay, tzibur adds something, but it adds a dimension. However, the question is, it's a dimension. The essence of tefillah is not the tzibur component, it's tefillah. But the mashmois of the inference of the Maimon Chazal is that it's tefillah b'tzibur. If that's missing, then it's not Podani, you haven't redeemed me, not me and not my children. That's what the Maimon Chazal is saying. And at the end of the Maimon is going to explain, we see in this pasuk the two levels of redemption of bittul. There's mikravli, a battle, and there's Podoh B'Shalom. The lower level is mikravli, we're describing now. And you constantly the seichel to, whoa, take it easy, rein in the midas, and we've got a goal here, you want to be effective, and yet chesed, it's a constant battle. That's the low level. The Podoh B'Shalom Nafshi, the person's free, you're going to get trusted. It's peaceful, there's no battle. Because it's all etzem and nefesh, rooted in atzmos ratzon Hashem, and his natural feelings are all in expressive of Elikus. There's no need to fight and struggle and compromise and at every turn. All right, so we'll stop here and we'll continue our Chazorah tomorrow.